Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, yes. Shortly, just before you get sworn in, I believe this is Mr. Omar Henry.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Now, just before we start, I just want to make some introductory remarks about the process. As you will probably know, as all of us will know, this is the second week of the social justice and nation building process where we have been having hearings. And in this week, the hearings will be focusing on the testimonies of the players, past and present. The players that will be coming forward to address us will be sharing their experiences of incidences of racial and other forms of discrimination in cricket. 2 players will testify before us on each day of this week. And today we will start the hearings with a testimony from Mr. Omar Henry, who is already on the stand. And thereafter we'll be hearing from Mr. Mpo Selowa. And that seems to be our schedule for the day. And other indications will be made as the week goes on. Mr. Omar Henry, I'm going to ask Advocate Mele to administer either the oath or the affirmation, depending on which you want to do. But what we are interested in taking that process or procedure is that anyone who testifies before us must commit themselves to speaking the truth, because it is the truth that we want, and we don't want to assume that that is clear to everybody. So it's a ritual that we make every day before anyone takes the stand to give us the benefit of his or her testimony. Do you understand that?
Do.
Thank you. Advocate Mele.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Mr. Henry.
Good morning, Advocate.
Yes. Are you going to be taking an oath or are you going to affirm?
I'll take the oath.
Thank you. Mr. Omar Henry, do you swear that the evidence that you will be giving today is the truth, nothing but the truth? And if that is so, please raise your right hand on camera and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. You've now been sworn in as a participant in the SJN proceedings.
Mrs. July.
Morning, Chair. Chair, we've got a document which is a submission before us. That document was converted to an affidavit. If we can just take about 2 minutes, Chair. I've emailed that affidavit last night, very late last night. I got it around 8 p.m., 9 p.m. last night. I'm sure Fumisa, in all these emails that she's receiving, she must have missed it.
I haven't received
Okay.
Can you stand down then?
Maybe we should stand down for about 5 minutes, Chair.
Mr. Henry, we want to have copies of the affidavit that was sent to Mr. July, yesterday, last night. We thought we had copies, but we are going to make quick copies. We'll adjourn just for 5 minutes.
No problem, sir.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Henry, I just want to remind you that you are still bound by your oath.
Thank you.
Mr. July.
Good morning, Mr. Henry.
Good morning, Advocate Dumisa.
Yes, you can call me Mr. July. There's only one advocate or two advocates in this room. It's,
Okay, all right, okay. Thanks for the
yes.
correction.
Mr. Henry, you, like I indicated earlier on, you made submissions somewhere in April 2021 to the SJN project. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That submission was converted to an affidavit that was discussed with you. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And I see that the affidavit was commissioned today, which is
Correct.
the 12th of July 2021. Is that correct?
Correct, sir.
Yes. And in this affidavit, you cover a number of issues, of topics.
Yeah.
One of them, you cover, your affidavit cover your time as a player.
Yeah.
It also covers the period when you were a coach.
Yes.
I must be specific, a coach of Stellenbosch and a coach of Boland,
Yes.
right? And it also covers the period when you were a convener of the selectors for the national team.
That's right.
You
That's
were
right.
also at one stage a convener for selectors at Boland. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And then it also covers the period when you became a consultant for CSA, Cricket South Africa. Is that correct?
There's one other one where I became CEO of Poland. You mentioned that, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then as a
And then the consultant.
consultant
For Cricket South Africa.
Cricket South Africa. And
That's
it
correct.
also lastly covers the experience that you had in relation to your son.
That's correct. My son's experience, yes.
Yes. One part that I left is that at one stage you were a CEO of Boland.
That's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's the period that it covers. And you talk about your earlier days of cricket from 1967 to 1975.
Yes.
Then 1977 to 1992.
Yeah.
And then you cover the World Cup, 1992.
Yeah.
And then
Yes.
you cover the period 1993 to 1999 as a coach
Yes.
in Stellenbosch. You cover the
Yes.
period when you were convener, coach and convener.
Yeah.
2005, 2008, you were coach of back to Stellenbosch University.
Yes.
And
That's
then
right.
CEO, and then consultant. So
That's right.
in making your submissions, you don't have to read your affidavit. You can just talk to it. When I'm saying you don't have to read it, I'm not saying leave out everything that is in the affidavit, but you can just talk to your affidavit.
Okay.
Yes.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, you can proceed.
Thank you. First and foremost, Advocate, Mr. Chair, I just want to thank everyone for the opportunity, Cricket South Africa and the Ombudsman Management. Today, I'm fairly excited about this opportunity. It reminded me of the very first time at unification, when everybody sort of asked for forgiveness, what happened in the past. And now in 2021, we more or less looking back and what happened since 1991. I just want to make clear that what prompted me to make the submission, and that was basically the Black Lives Matter. When I heard the stories of the players, and I look back at my own career and what barriers I had to go through, I really thought that I need to support them. And I've got similar stories to tell. And then we had a meeting, a virtual meeting with the board, Mr. Chris Nzani, and some of his board members, and some of our players, the ex-players. And it originated by them making a request to have a meeting with Graham Smith face-to-face. I was then invited to that meeting, virtual meeting, and to the disappointment of the players, the board decided not to bring Graham Smith to that meeting and discuss this project of the Ombudsman. It was there that I listened to their stories and what they believe happened to them. And I was given the opportunity to tell my stories, some of my stories. And the gist of that discussion went around and covered racism, the injustices, the self-interest, the fragmentation, and the mistrust that we've experienced in the organization at Cricket South Africa and some of the provinces, if not all. So it was a very disappointed group of ex-players after that meeting. And it was a case of, we basically now have to wait for this project of the Ombudsman. And that's why I am happy that, I can at least tell my story, and hopefully it will assist in us arriving at a successful organization, whatever that means to us. So coming back to my early days, as a young man who grew up, born and bred in Stellenbosch, an area that was named in Afrikaans, Die Vlakte. It was a flat area, more or less on the borders of the University of Stellenbosch campus, and basically divided by one road called Merriman Avenue. It was there that I learned how to play cricket, basically how to play any sport. Soccer, rugby, cricket, table tennis, tennis. We played it all, but we never played cricket at primary school level. We played soccer, and the girls played netball at primary school, and we had athletics. So cricket was played on the pavements and on open areas between friends that lived in the same road. We made our own bats out of spare wood that we can find. There were trees planted on the pavement, and the distance from tree to tree was more or less at 22 meters, like a pitch. And that became where we played in between. So we marked the height of a pitch on the tree, and that was us playing. Out of that, we just by ourselves, we decided to play what we called test cricket in the holidays, and we will then play against another street. And it was there that I fell in love with this game, cricket. I was also influenced because of my parents, my immediate family from my father's side, mother's side, they all played sport. And the people in the area of that flutter, they were very passionate about their sport. And all we did was follow. So eventually when I got to high school, Lukov High School, which was just across the road from me, where I stayed, it was there that I was introduced at the age of 15, 16 to play cricket, official cricket, hardball cricket, where you have to wear pads and gloves and those kind of stuff. The school itself at the time didn't play or didn't have fixtures against another school, but played in the local club league, the senior men's club league. And we had a teacher that was our coach. He was our captain. He did everything. We never had meetings except for when he announced the team. But we practiced twice a week, and he would take us for one-on-one practices. A fantastic guy. Les Bergstedt was his name. He was a teacher, passionate about sport. He did soccer, he did cricket. I possibly owe him a lot. And I never thought that at the age of 15, I would play against my uncles and people their age, cricket. He felt that Les Bergstedt, the teacher, felt that I was good enough and introduced me and selected me for that first team. The way sport was structured in those days, if I can remember well, it was basically families, group of families, neighbors that formulated their own clubs. So in Stellenbosch, there was about, at that time, 10 to 12 clubs, that including the school, Lukov. And they will have a fixture, a league. And out of that league, the best players get selected to represent Stellenbosch as a community, to play against teams in Cape Town, or in the Worcester area, or in the Somerset West area, or in the Paarl area, or in the Strand area. So each area had its own leagues. They picked their best team, you play against them, and then out of that, the Western Province team will be selected to play provincial cricket. So in my years at school, I was so lucky that I entered into an environment that was very competitive, very talented cricketers at the school. I was the youngest in the team, and all I had to do was just follow what they did and give it my best shot. Cut a long story short, as a schoolboy side, we won that league against adults. That was a massive achievement in terms of giving me personally confidence and self-belief that I can play this game. So during that time, it was when South Africa had to play, the white South Africa had to play England. And a colored player from Cape Town, Basil de Oliveira, he should have been selected for England, and England didn't select him. And then eventually they selected him, if my memory served me right, and then South Africa canceled the tour. And for our luck, as look of school, as young cricketers, Basil de Oliveira came out to South Africa and he did some coaching. So he came to our school for a coaching session. It was during that session that, and to be quite honest with you, I didn't know, because I wasn't at this function, but I was at the coaching session, where he told all the parents of the kids went to this function at the evening. We weren't allowed, and he told the parents and the teacher that was our coach that he saw this young kid that he believed can become a very, very fine cricketer.
Are you okay, Mr.? Are you okay, Mr.? Do you want some?
I'm fine.
Okay.
So my parents came home and informed me. But Basil de Oliveira wanted me to go with him to England. And unfortunately, my parents said, no, you can't go. You need to finish your school. You need to get something behind your name in terms of career, and then we can talk. So that seed was planted, and I carried on playing cricket. I eventually represented Western Province in the under-21. They had under-21 competition, and then eventually in the B side, and then eventually I made it into the senior side. So the journey itself came upon me very, very quickly, and I had to grow up very quickly. I experienced challenges in terms of, the emotional things about, you're playing against adults and whatever the case is. But I think it stood me in good stead at that time. So what happened in '75 was when I got selected for Western Province senior team was there was some kind of conflict or issues with Western Province and the sponsor of the competition. And some of the senior players didn't want to represent Western Province for various reasons. Some of them were religious reasons because it was an alcohol sponsor. I myself is a Muslim, and I felt that I'm not drinking the product, and therefore I'm not advertising it, and whatever the case is, and I decided to put myself up for selection. And it was basically, one can say, a different Western Province side, because at that time, cricket was so healthy in Cape Town or in the Western Province. The players that I looked up to and that I learned from, people like Lefty Adams, Dickie Conrad, Dick Abbott, Talibe Harding, Those kind of players was basically players who I looked up to, and they were my heroes. And I had a lot of respect for them. Even people in Stellenbosch, where I played, my uncles, people in the street where I was brought up. There was a guy who was friends with my parents, Salam Rasid. He actually played with Basil de Oliveira for the South African. In those days, there was, if my memory serves me right, there was a colored Western Province team, and there was a black Western Province team, and there was an Indian Western Province. It was very confusing. But that is what the environment I was brought up. But then they picked the South African team, and I remember there was a black African guy called Ben Malamba, a big man. He had huge hands. And I watched them play. And somewhere along the line, it happened that I met his sons eventually. That I will talk about that later. But that 75 side was basically, like I said, a second string side. And we went to play in that, the provincial tournament. And I think we surprised ourselves. Eventually, we won what we called at that time the Dadabai Trophy. And it was a strong competition. If I can remember teams like Transvaal, Natal, Eastern Province, there were good black cricketers and black African cricketers. So it was, for me as a youngster to come into that kind of environment, it sort of shaped me and made me just stronger and encouraged me to pursue this and play this game. It was ironic that in 1975, October, I think it was October, that I played in a multiracial team at UCT campus, the University of Cape Town cricket ground, whereby the colored Western Province team played against the white Western Province team. And the two captains, the white Western Province team captain was Eddie Barlow, and the colored Western Province team, black Western Province team was Kuti Neatland. Two very respected captains at the time. And we played this game. What was also surprising at that time, the game, was about 10 or 15 minutes before the game, we were supposed to play against one another. However, the two captains decided that they were going to mix the two teams up. So some of us played for Eddie Barlow, for Kuti Neatland's team. The end result of that game was that it was such a close game against two teams that has never ever competed with or against one another, and it went into the last over. And my observation I will never forget was we came back into the dressing room, and both teams were more or less just socializing. And I sensed that at that time in 1975, that from a player perspective, there was an urge, a feel, and a strive for players of all races to play against one another and with one another. Unfortunately, both sides' leadership couldn't come to an agreement, and that sort of thing, it fell flat. Towards the end of that season, we won that, our provincial team won that Dadabai trophy, like I said. And something happened during a game when we went to Durban to play Natal. The first day of our game was washed out. It rained. The water leaked onto our covers, and that day was then called off. And on our way to our hotel, we were a group of players in a combi, and we were driving to a hotel, and we saw, we had to go past Kingsmead cricket ground, which was the ground of the white Natal team. And we saw that they were playing a game. Now, at the time, as a Western Province player, you were told you cannot go to watch a cricket game at a white cricket ground. For some reason, we were about 6 or 7 in that combi. We drove past that ground around about just after 4. It was tea time. And in my understanding, at tea time, they opened the gates and you can go in for free. And we stopped and sneaked in, and we were just lying behind the grass banking and just to see what does it look like. Never been there. So we went in and must have stayed there about 10 or 15 minutes, and then went back to the hotel. What we didn't know was that the Western Province Board was informed that we went to that ground. So by the end of that season, we had to appear in front of a disciplinary committee because we attended that game. So that disciplinary meeting was held in Stellenbosch, where I stayed, at a hotel called Benvenuto Hotel. And the 7 of us had to appear. What I found out was that we as a team, we were booked in a white hotel. And apparently you had to apply for a permit to get there, to get into the hotel. So I knew as a player that I overstepped the line by attending that game. That I knew. So we appeared, and when I got to that disciplinary meeting and entered the hotel, I saw people sitting in the window and shouting, "Kill, kill," and call me sellout and whatever. I couldn't believe that I had to appear what I termed as a kangaroo court. I thought I was going to appear in front of a disciplinary committee. So I went to sit, and, you know, I can't tell you how I felt. I was scared, I think, definitely, because I was, 23 years old. I'd never been confronted with anything like that at that time. So we were then told that, or asked if we did attend that game, and we said yes, all of us. I wasn't sure what my other teammates knew about this permit that was applied, but that was what I knew. So we were told that if we plead guilty, then you know, it will be a soft punishment, whatever. Otherwise, you get a life ban. So when it came to my turn, I said, I admit that I attended. I was in the ground. However, I asked the question about the permit for this hotel. And I asked whether that is not double standards. And for me, what was good for the goose was good for the gander. And unfortunately, I lost that debate. And I was banned. I was abused by the people who sat in the windows and whatever the case is. But I came to a realization that, you know, as an oppressed who's fighting for justice, for fairness, if that is what the way I'm treated at that time, then I'm sorry, we've got a long way to go in terms of fighting for democracy. I got that realization that day. It was never it wasn't an easy decision. I had to walk around
Mr. Henry, do you want us to take a couple of minutes so that you can?
this.
Yes, we will take a few minutes, 5 minutes. And yes, I understand. I understand. So the time now is just about 11:05. And yeah. Your dear wife there, or if it is your dear wife or your daughter, when you are, yes, I can see that she's counseling you. But so
I'm sorry, it is.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You know, can we then come back at 11:15? We are at 4 minutes past 11 now. Just
Yes,
for
sir.
you to recompose.
We'll do that. We'll
okay.
do that.
11:15.
We'll do that.
Okay. Proceed, Mr. Henry.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. You were still relating the incident of what you
So I was
considered.
confronted,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, with
That incident with those people at the windows who were abusing you. And that's when
Yes,
Yes.
I was eventually banned for life, and I had to make some tough decisions.
For life.
I was banned for life by Western Province SACBOC, the South African Cricket Board of Control, and I had to really, it was a very tough time for me. However, I made the decision that I'm going to pursue my dream and the seed that was planted by Basil de Oliveira to pursue and see whether I can become a professional cricketer. I was then approached by a white club called Greenpoint Cricket Club, whose chairman was, I think he was an advocate or a lawyer, Mr. Malinik, who at that time was fighting for multiracial cricket, and he opened his club. So I joined them, and in the White Western Province, which is SACA, South African Cricket Association. And that was 76. And that coincided with the Soweto riots as well. And just to give you an insight that my brothers and sisters were at college, and they were basically fighting for democracy as well. So it was a very, very intense situation in our house as well, that my parents had to manage that amongst us. We accepted and respected one another, and still up to today, we support one another. And so during that period until 1992, before the World Cup, I played for Western Province, Boland, and Orange Free State in our summer, and I went to play cricket in England, where I started by getting a trial for 3 months in 77. It was possibly the worst 3 months of my life in terms of cricket, because the weather was so poor, and coming from South Africa playing in nice sunny conditions, I was confronted with terrible weather, wet pitches, etc. And fortunately for me, the captain of the team saw something in me and offered me a contract for 78 to go back to the club in Lancashire. I went back there in 78, and you almost feel that because there was so much invested in you by the club and the people, that you owe them something. And for some reason, I played and I had a very, very good season. And the club won the league after 20 odd years of a drought of not winning a trophy. I've never seen people so happy. And this is an environment that I wasn't used to. My home language was Afrikaans. I had to learn to speak everyday English all the time. And those adjustments sort of took me out of my comfort zones, and I had to grow up very quickly. But be that as it may, it was during that time, that season, that I then got an offer to go to Scotland, which I also took with both hands, and it gave me another experience. That journey in Scotland was an unbelievable journey, because I think I was thrown in the deep end by getting a contract from a country, the national team, to play for the national team as an overseas player, because they were allowed one. And then they made me the coach of the team. And eventually they made me captain as well, which put me in a tremendous difficult situation when you're the player, coach, and captain. And your brief was that you need to improve the country's cricket to be able to qualify for the World Cricket Organizing Body, which is the ICC, where they can become an associate and qualify to compete in the World Cup. That journey took me 13 consecutive years going backwards and forwards, and basically playing 12 months of the year cricket, 6 months in South Africa in the summer, and 6 months going to Scotland. That opportunity fell on my lap, not by design, but by being in the right place at the right time, I reckon. And it assisted my growth in my cricket to come back to South Africa and play in a different environment as well, and compete against good quality cricketers. I grew in terms of my cricket performances, and also as a human being, and how to deal with all the barriers. And I had issues even playing for SACA, the white South African Cricket Union. But I sort of started to build in this determination to succeed, and brought people together, because when I was banned for life, I saw the riots, I thought I could use cricket as a catalyst to bring people together of different races and religions and whatever. And later that was confirmed by our late President Nelson Mandela. And when unification came in 1991, I felt a relief, because there was a huge burden, and the abuse I went through, and the stigma about being named a sellout. And I had threats. My parents had threats. So it became a relief that, like I mentioned earlier, we can reconcile and we can forgive one another, and we can start on a clean sheet. Cut a long story short, I was basically past my sell-by date, because by that time I was 40 years old. And for some reason, I played my best cricket. And I had to make a decision to come back to South Africa permanently, because by that time, some of my children were born in Scotland. I owned property in Scotland, and I was a resident in Scotland. And when South Africa got back into international cricket in 1992 through the help of, obviously, the ANC and Nelson Mandela and everyone else, the leadership of that time, South Africa managed to be accepted, and the opportunity came to get to the World Cup in 1992. Because I was playing so well, I got selected. And everybody was excited about that World Cup. As a group of players, and I knew most of them, we all respected one another. We felt that we had a chance because we were an unknown to the rest of the world at that time. So we left the shores with a very confident mind that we can. However, we started off well by beating Australia in Australia for the first time. And the second game for us was in New Zealand against New Zealand. And I did my research as the frontline spinner that I'm not going to play that many games because of the conditions and the way our squad was selected. Because we were stacked with a lot of all-rounders. So I made peace that I'm possibly going to be lucky if I play 1 or 2 games. But I saw New Zealand play in New Zealand, and I saw there was a pitch that was going to suit me. So we went to New Zealand, and I had high expectations that I could play like anyone else. So we went to New Zealand, and to my detriment, I wasn't selected. And I saw the game that New Zealand played where the spinners they were dominant. In both teams, spinners were very dominant the previous games. So I was very disappointed. Knowing myself, I needed to know why I wasn't selected. So I went to the manager and asked him, can you give me a reason why? Which is the protocol, you have to go do that. And he said, look, I know you're disappointed, and I would talk to the captain and the coach, and I'll come back to you. Cut a long story short, we played the game. We were absolutely annihilated. We lost the game. Everybody was upset. And in the dressing room, this incident happened between me and the captain. And it created a very unpleasant situation that eventually had to be stopped by the managers. And I wasn't happy the way I was treated and the answers that was given to me. So I pursued the matter further. Several meetings was held. And still I wasn't satisfied. And then I wanted to come home. I wanted to leave. That created even more tension. And I also had my wife was pregnant at the time at home. So I managed to find out that the president of that time, Mr. late Mr. Krish Makadouche, was in Australia. So I requested a meeting with him. I explained my situation, and I said I wanted to go home if I don't get the right answers. And he pleaded with me that, no, there's a bigger picture, I can't go home. I was of the view that if I don't go home, there's no guarantee that things like this won't happen with players of my color in the future. He then pleaded with me for a few hours and other people as well. And eventually I changed my mind and stayed because the way he's put things to me. Nevertheless, I played against Sri Lanka, performed reasonably well. We lost that game as well. After that, I still became true and behaved true to the team. Did what I had to do, supported everyone else. We managed to get to the semi-final, which I think was fantastic. I firmly believe that we could have won that World Cup if it wasn't for the rain, but be that as it may, it did happen. And even with that incident that happened, I felt that maybe it was meant to happen to me as the first black to play for South Africa. And hopefully that will then be addressed and we will move on. In hindsight, I was wrong. And that's why we're here today still. So it was tough lessons at the time. But in the same time, good things happened as well. I mean, I played for Free State, who was an Afrikaans province. And in those days, history will tell you that cricket was an English game played by the Englishmen and brought to South Africa by English. That's what they believe. And to a certain extent, Afrikaners felt that they were given also a raw deal, just like black people, although they enjoyed the privileges of apartheid. And my stay in Bloemfontein was also an education about how liberal some of those Afrikaners were. And I made friends for life with some of them, still friends with them today. For Free State, at that season, we won the Currie Cup, and it was the last year of the Currie Cup, which is an historical trophy in terms of white cricket. And for them, that was a great achievement in terms of where they come from, the Afrikaners. And when I looked at it, in my contribution to that, and trying to prove to the white man that a black man can also play cricket, and that we can all live together in peace and harmony and respect one another, I felt in my heart that I broke down barriers. And I think I did. Because those players that were close to me, those people that were close to me, we still have respect for one another, although we come from different backgrounds. And we know, they knew in their heart of hearts that apartheid was wrong. So looking back at the World Cup, looking back at my stay at Free State, you know, it was all part of a journey to eradicate a past that we weren't happy with. That was my experience. So they gave me another 2-year contract, and I decided I had enough. I had to come home. To travel with my children and my wife, as much as we enjoyed the journey in terms of meeting people and enjoying a different country, home is home. So we came home to Stellenbosch, and I was fortunate to get a job at Stellenbosch University, which at that time was battling with transformation itself. And part of my job was to get black people to come and play cricket, which I did. And that was another journey to surround me with more black people and try and break down the barriers that exist. At the same time, it was a proud university that wants to be successful. And when I got there, the team was in disarray. I got there in February, and it was halfway through the season. They had a bad season, and the following season, we had to go through some very tough discussions, how to become a good team. And to cut a long story short, my first 6 years was very fruitful in terms of that. And we built a very good team. I brought in players, black players, guys like Aldrin October, James Albani. James went on to play for Boland and got a degree. Roger Telemarcus, who eventually played for South Africa. And I felt that for me was looking to encourage and speed up this process of a successful unification and transformation. I then got an opportunity after Boland won in 1994, the Standard Bank Trophy. I got an opportunity to coach Boland. And I was really excited to go and do that job, because it was an opportunity that was just putting me on another level in terms of my coaching within South Africa. But I then entered the reality of the quota system. And the incident was that there were some very fine black players playing for Boland. Guys like Charles Langeveld, Henry Williams, Justin Ontong. All three of them eventually represented South Africa. But at that time, and this specific incident, they were picked for the South African A side. And because of the quota system, you then have to pick or select another 3 black players, which we did. And one of them was a youngster from Stellenbosch, Pinel, Henry Davids. My relationship with him personally was through his father, who went to the same school as me, who brought him to me as a 15, 16-year-old and asked me to coach him, which I did with the help of my assistant coach, Adrian Holstock. And he then, our paths crossed when I became the coach there. Cut a long story short, he did well in that first game, scored 100, and we had to come back and select another team for another game, where I was told that when the 3 players who came back from the SAA team can only, that is your quota, only the 3 of them. And here I'm sitting with this youngster who performed very well. And I had to tell him that he he's not in the team. I took the risk and fought for him to be selected, knowing full well that I could lose my job. But I stuck my neck out, and that's when the realization came that, hold on, there's still some either misunderstanding or mistrust or not honesty within the system. During that season, South Africa had to select a new panel of selectors, and I was sort of nominated to become the convener. And I decided to take and go for that opportunity. I got the job as convener, and I remember that in my first meeting with the board, one of the board members told me that the target was I need to pick 50% black players in the team. And to be honest with you, from what I knew about the system at the time, I couldn't honestly say that I could have achieved that immediately. And I had to be honest. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't deliver on that.
Mr. Henry,
Yeah.
just to go back a bit on Boland, the three players, can you make it very clear, the three players who were selected
Yes.
to play for SAA,
Yeah.
then they had to come back.
Yes.
So when they come back, they are automatically selected to
Yes.
form part of Boland.
Correct.
And then you are saying you were now refused to add another player in addition to the three players.
Well, the debate went along. There was a view that you've already got your three players. And I was of the view, no. They can't be still quota players.
Yeah.
They played for South Africa. They're there now on merit.
Yeah.
They're playing a lower level. So therefore, and I had a black player who performed. And he deserved to be there.
So
yes?
the real issue was that you can't have more than three players irrespective of how they perform.
That was the understanding of the people who discussed it with me. And I disagreed with that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right? So, in terms of transformation, the quota, there was this debate about quota and target. Originally, I was against quota, purely because of my understanding of this tag quota and how it can be abused, and it was abused. I can tell you that now for a fact. That when people who didn't want you in the team,
For whatever their reasons are, they will throw that quota tag onto you. And my view was that the black players that I saw in the system at the time was, if they were given the opportunity at domestic level and a fair opportunity, they had enough skill and enough talent. And if they get the right support, they will grow and get better. And that was my focus, was on the development of that talent, the nerve. And I made a commitment. I made a commitment that with the little experience or whatever the case is, and the knowledge that I gathered over the years, that I will assist that process. So I said to the board that what I can guarantee you is I will grow the number of players playing for South Africa over my 4 years. That I'll guarantee them. So it is against that background that I took the job. And I did. The panel that served with me, we did manage to grow and increase the number of black players. We were challenged. We were challenged. There's no two ways about it. And I realized that it was almost part of the journey to find one another, that we had to go through this, but we had to stand up for what is best for a new South Africa. Transformation for me was inevitable. It was non-negotiable. We had to change. Cricket at that time has taught me that if you don't change as a player, if you don't change as an administrator, as a leader, you won't be successful in cricket. And in the context of South Africa, a new South Africa with our past, I was prepared to sit in any debate, in any discussion, to make that a reality, because I believe, I firmly believe, that there was strength in diversity. I've had experience of that, physical experience. And therefore I was committed to that. So we went on, and at the end of my 4 years, I gave a report, and I can't say that that report was discussed or whatever the case is. But
Mr. Henry, before the end of your 4 years, are you in a position to tell us how many black players and who are they that you selected when you were a convener?
When I came onto the panel, players like Herschel Gibbs and Makaya was playing. My memory served me right.
There was another player that he made me very excited, and that was Faneko Ngam. And unfortunately, he went through injuries that cut his cricket career short. But he was, in my view, he would have become a great fast bowler. He had all the credentials and the natural ability to have played for South Africa for a long time. However, it was people like Ashwell Prince, Hashim Amla, J.P. Dumini, Monde Zondeke, Paul Adams, Roger Telemarcus, to name you a few, that came through that year. So from what I had two, those players came on. And in my view, they contributed to the success of that team. And with the help of my panel, and at that time, we inherited a South African team that went through turmoil because of the Hansi Cronje saga. And we had leadership issues within the team. The panel decided to find a new captain. And that's where we found Graham Smith as a young 22-year-old. And one of the reasons why was Graham Smith was just entering the first class setup, and there was something special about him as a cricketer. There was a presence about him. He showed leadership qualities. He was a fighter. Those were the characteristics that we saw. And if you look through his career, you possibly will see those characteristics. But we believe that in that team, they could develop and become possibly one of the best test teams in the world. And even after my 4 years, that vision carried on, because what Cricket South Africa did was possibly the best thing they could have done in terms of continuity. One of the selectors that served on my panel as convener took over from me, and he pursued that vision. And by 2013, 12, 13, and 14, I think South Africa became the #1. We increased the number of black participants within the team. What I didn't know and wasn't certain of during my tenure was that there were issues within that team about transformation. I wasn't privy to what happens in the dressing room because I'm not the coach, and I hardly went to team meetings, whatever the case is. But I sensed that. So I more or less said to Cricket South Africa that they need to go into that team and speak to them about and make it clear to them about transformation. And nobody has to fear, because it is inevitable, it has to happen. It must happen for the best, for all of us. I don't know whether that happened. I then came down back to Stellenbosch.
Mr. Hendrik, before you go
to
back to Stellenbosch,
when you selected Mr. Smith,
Yeah.
the submission, do you know Tsolekile?
Tommy Tsolekile?
Yes.
Well, he was part, we selected him as well.
Yes. So Tommy Tsolekile has a different view on what happened.
Yes.
Because he says in his submission, he captained Mr. Smith
Yes.
when they played together.
Yes.
I'm
In
sure
the
it's
under-19.
Under
In the
19.
under-19. That's right.
So now the question is, what is it then when they came to the national team made Smith better than Tsolekile?
Smith was elevated to the first class and performed,
In my view, better than Tommy Tsolekile. Tommy Tsolekile was, from a panel's point of view, was identified as a possible South African cricketer and a possible captain as well. So we had to go through that process and journey whereby we do what we believe is best on either side, whether it is being a successful team and being successful in transforming the team. that was what we decided. Tommy, in my journey, we had long chats. And I think between the two of us, we understood where we were, although Tommy, in his own mind and where he was, experienced challenges that he never shared with me. It was only on this Zoom with the board, with the Black Lives Matter, that I heard. And I told them at that time I was very, very disappointed because my relationship with them was open as a convener. And their reply to me was they were afraid to talk at that time because they were going to lose their place in the teams or won't be accepted in the teams. I found it difficult to accept, knowing what I went through, and I was confronted, and I personally confronted those issues by myself. As tough as it was, I did that. Maybe my expectations of Tommy and other players who experienced those things, we're not all the same. But what that incident or stories taught me was, as an organization like Cricket South Africa or the provinces, there was a lack of education and about understanding what development is, what transformation is. And, you know, I can talk about this all my life because it was my life. It is not an easy subject, and it is something that we have to continue. And we're possibly going to continue this for even when my grandchildren are adults. And I hope not that is going to be the case. But from my side with Tommy, all I said to him was persevere and keep focusing on what is in your control, keep performing, keep developing your own game. And eventually we picked him. But then it was then inside there that he experienced all the issues that he never shared with me. I hope I answered your question.
Can I follow up on that question? Do I understand you to be saying it's an oversimplification by Tommy to say I, Tommy, do not understand how I captain somebody at another level, i.e. I was captain to Graham Smith, and that is historical. And it now comes to a time when in the national team, a leader must be selected. And the person whom I had led at a lower level becomes now my leader. South Africa being what it is, am I oversimplifying what others would say is a complex situation if I say I am now entitled to deduce from this selection of a person I've captained for years on end? He now, because he's white, emerges as my leader. Is it an oversimplification if that is the kind of conclusion that Tommy is drawing? Or doesn't the past get taken into account when, you know, a selection of a captain at this level, where Graham gets now selected as a leader to Tammy? Or are the dynamics that we need to be conscious of to explain what he says to us was an anomaly?
Look, all I can say to you was that
At the time of me being convener with my panel, while we were looking around for leadership within the team, right? At that time, at that specific time, Tommy, in his position as wicketkeeper, batsman, in our view, wasn't that strong a candidate to be selected. The captaincy was another story, right? That's another issue. It was a case of the player to come in where there was a vacancy in position in the batting order or bowling, whatever the case was. And that's how Graham Smith came up. In all honesty, Tommy came in afterwards. I remember selecting Tommy with a squad for the SAA squad to go to Zimbabwe and to Australia. And that was, it is on those two tours that he narrowed the gap in terms of selection for the national team. And it is on that basis that we selected him for the national team. And that is how I explained it to him as a convener. And he showed no ill feelings about that processes. And we still talk about it. And like I said, and I told him as well, why did you never told me the things that you went through on your journey until that time when our paths crossed, me as a convener and you as a player? I never until that day when we spoke on that Zoom. Look, these are all lessons to be learned. And if we can learn from these lessons, Mr. Chair, and possibly move and make this path of finding a way to become a better nation and a stronger nation, a stronger cricket South Africa, a stronger province, where the fairness and the openness becomes part of our daily lives, and stop this racism, this injustices, this fragmentation, this mistrust. These are the stumbling blocks that we're still dealing with today. And it's going to take an effort and a commitment from all of us to pursue the journey to eradicate those things. Those are the real stumbling blocks. But then on the other hand, for where I come from, most times, that is the development of especially the black players that has got potential and talent. And I think it is in that area that we're failing transformation. I've attended 4 or 5 transformation endowments. But if I measure on what is being said and what is being agreed upon, and I look at what we've achieved, then I find it very, very difficult. I find it very difficult. But let me come back to, I need to raise this point, Mr. Chair. And that is the black player that came to Stellenbosch, Pele Ramala, who eventually, as a player who played, he came from St. John's, I think, if my memory serves me right. And he was in Gauteng. And I was looking to recruit a black player, a black African player, to Stellenbosch University because I felt that was a must. So I was told about Ramala, and when I saw him the first time as a cricketer, I saw this athlete and this natural ability. I didn't know him from a bar of soap. So we recruited him in 2007 or 8, I think, just before I left for Berlin. And I think it was Roger Telemarcus who took over from me at Berlin as a coach. And Ramala came there and he excelled as a cricketer. He excelled as a leader. He became captain of Stellenbosch University. Our paths crossed when I was CEO at Berlin. He became captain of Berlin. Between him and the coach Salih Nakadin, in my first year when I went to Berlin as a province, at the time Berlin was basically almost a victim of structural changes that took place. After Berlin won the Standard Bank Trophy as a professional team, South Africa, Cricket South Africa thought in their minds that they're going to change the playing structures. We just had unification from there were 11 provinces playing professional cricket. They decided to make it 6 franchises. And in my view, that was the wrong thing, because you immediately take opportunities away from especially those who never had opportunities.
Mr. Henry, time is the enemy of all of us in these hearings, I've come to discover. You know, we have a lunch time between 12 and 1 o'clock because there is another witness or participant who will be coming at 1 o'clock. I would like you to, because I want you to feel that you have said everything that you possibly could say. Now, I am going to take off 30 minutes from our lunch time. And if I can give you the next 20 minutes for you to summarize your input, which we have found, and I speak for myself really, to have been very informative. But if you could take the next 20 minutes and highlight those things you feel we need to hear from us, taking into account we have the benefit of your statement and your affidavit. But since you are on the stand, you can then use the next 18 minutes to 12:30 to highlight what you feel an oral testimony from you will inform our understanding of your submission, especially the highlights in your affidavit.
Well, for me, thanks, Mr. Chair. For me, it's basically, you know, the one issue that is close to home is my son's issue. And beside my own journey, and what made it very uncomfortable was it happened at the time that I was the CEO at Bulla. And with my involvement in cricket when he was a boy, I was hardly at home. It was his mother who raised him, and he was a lovely sportsman. He loved sport. He was just like me, in a sense, for all of us in that environment that just love sport. He played all sport, and he had to make a choice between playing cricket or hockey when he was 17 or 18 years old, and he chose cricket. He was a candidate for South African hockey and a candidate for South Africa under-19 cricket. He captained Boland under-15 cricket, where they won that competition. When I looked at that team that Boland had at the time, it was possibly one of the most talented bunch of kids I've seen for a very, very long time. I was so excited about those kids that I felt Boland was on the right track in terms of their development. Unfortunately, we failed that entire group. The way we managed the growth of that potential that sat in that group. Now, that group today would be around 28, 29. I think, my memory served me right. The one player that is now playing for South Africa is Lazard Williams, who played in that team. Later on, another player who's played for South Africa recently, who played with them for Boland under-19, was Keegan Peterson, another black player. And if you look at their pathways, and you can talk to them yourselves, then you'll find that they had challenges which could have been avoided and could possibly have speeded up their growth as players as well. So what happened with my son was poor management. And all he wanted was, he didn't make himself captain number one of the Boland senior team. He just got into that team being selected as a young cricketer. I recused myself because I worked for Boland at the time on that issue. The coach was Bani Ibrahim, and the convener was Noor Rueda. And what confused me was the president, who attended the meeting with me as CEO. I couldn't understand that. But in any case, when it came to discussing my son, I left the meeting. And I came back once that issue was addressed, and it's only towards the end of the meeting when I heard about the candidates that his name wasn't there. I didn't ask any questions. My son approached them and asked why. My wife attempted several times. Why? Nothing happened. The coach left Boland. What annoyed me even more was Boland found it right to appoint a coach who didn't have the necessary qualification. And that coach, without telling him, my son, that he elected another captain, why he hasn't taken him as a captain. And you'll see all that, how they treated him in my submission. And for me, that was possibly the saddest part, where people can do that to young children, young kids, who has an ambition, a desire. He don't select himself. He gets selected by other people. And then the carpet gets pulled under him with no explanation. Up till today, nobody had the decency to tell him. Now, I can tell you now, he is not the only one. I personally, about a few months ago, addressed an issue of a white kid who was also a captain of a province. It took 5 years to resolve the issue, and shook hands and says, right, let's move forward, and apologize. 5 years. In any administrator, any leader's mind, it cannot be right. So the questions we have to ask ourselves, and I'll end off with this, Mr. Chair. As an organization, Cricket South Africa, or as a province, I would like to know what is a successful cricket organization look like? How does it look? I want presidents of provinces, leadership, to tell me in their mind, how does it look in terms of cricket? When we have to produce cricketers to play for South Africa of different backgrounds, different challenges. I mean, the social justice is rife still in this country. The mistrust in all spheres of life possibly. The fragmentation. Our development system that is flawed in terms of growing that talent to excellence and let them play with all the diversity we confronted with as one national team proud of their country to give it their best. Because at the end of the day, the way cricket works, your national team is your biggest asset in terms of your income. And we're all dependent on that. So what is a successful organization? Do we know in our mind how it looks? Can we give the public, the parents of those kids who is at the worst end of the stick, whose schools is not playing cricket in their area? Can we tell them how?
Can I ask a question about the current team that is now playing the West Indies? Wouldn't somebody say, look, just allow things to happen organically, because gradually we will get to where people expect us to get to. Look, for instance, the team that is currently on tour in the West Indies. It may not be what other people expect it to be, but, you know, look at the, as the word is used sometimes, players of color, black Africans and everybody else who are in that team. What else do those who are agitating for transformation in cricket, what else does this ombudsperson who is inquiring into social justice and nation building, what is he really wanting to happen? Because things will just develop themselves, and there is no need for anything to be done now, because in 2021 we can show that that transformation that people agitate for is not only taking place and is demonstrably seen in the cricket team that we have in the West Indies.
All right. Mr. Chair, I will answer you this way.
That if anyone can say to me, why is it that South Africa in almost 30 years produced one black African batsman in the top 6? One. In 30 years of unification. Just give me a good reason. Why? What is it? Can't they bat?
That would be Robert Mavuma.
He's the only one.
Yes, no,
He's the
no,
only
no.
one.
Yeah, yes.
In 30 years, I can't buy that. I can't buy that. Now, for me, I believe that we change from the bottom up. You identify the kid between the age of 10 and 15, and you develop, you invest. You don't become selective. We have two pathways in our school system as far as sport or cricket is concerned. The one is the elite schools, what we call the boys' schools in cricket, who produce cricketers, and they then bring blacks to their school and give them bursaries. I haven't got a problem with that. As parents, you can do that. That is a way of development. What about government schools? Why aren't we investing in that? And isn't that maybe the reason why there's only one Mavuma today? You go through our records of black, you find there are more bowlers than batters that played for South Africa. So if we want to strengthen a South African cricket team, then you've got to look at all aspects of the game and in all race groups to develop all aspects of the game so that the broader and the more people you have, the better. If you have depth, if you have strengths, you can compete against the world. The game has evolved so quickly at international level. Mr. Chair, you made a point of see how well we did against West Indies. If you look and understand cricket, right? Where we are in our cricket in terms of standard and the West Indies, there are 4 or 3 countries better than us. I've watched England play the other day, and through COVID, they had to pick a new team. And that team beat Pakistan. That means that they have almost 22 players at that level. Here you're telling me there's a thought that let it just happen. I've heard that before. I've heard that many moons ago, that let it just happen. No, in the context of South Africa, we have to make it happen. There's a need. There's haves and have-nots. So who says there isn't another Bavuma sitting somewhere in Langa or Nyanga or in Soweto? Who says there is not another Herschel Gibbs sitting in Cape Town? Who says there's not another Dumini? Who? It is our job to find them and nurture them.
I hear you, I hear you, I hear you. There's
So
just
the second
one
question, Mr. Chair, just to finish off, the second question.
I've got 4 questions for you. The first one is, what does a successful cricket organization look like? We're busy here with transformation and change management. Do we know what the key components are of change management? Do we know? We're 30 years in this process and we failed. We're flawed. We're struggling. The third question is, why does management of change fail? Why do we fail? What is the reasons? What are the concrete reasons? We want to move forward, we've got to be honest. We've got to be honest with one another. And the last one is, how can we enhance the probability of a successful change? If I get these answers from my experience, I'll be happy. I'll be happy to support and give my weight on any journey, that treat people fairly. We're human beings, we're not going to be right all the time, we're going to make mistakes, but we can be honest with one another. We can be fair with one another. We talk about social justice. When we have social justice and we talk about trying to eradicate them, the first thing we have to do is we look after those that is the worst in our society. They get the least of attention. I look at my own province. My own province. We're struggling to assist Bakweni. Bakweni is 15 minutes from the headquarters of Boland Cricket. It hurts. If we haven't got that conscience to really, really be sincere as leadership. And that for me is the key, leadership that can pave the way and create the picture of how that future needs to look. We don't do that. No.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henry. Advocate Mele has just one last question, and then we'll break up for lunch.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Omar Henry, I just wanted to understand, from your submission, I did read that you, with the incident of, or the experience of your son, that you did obviously escalate it with CSA. So now we just want to understand how CSA attempted to resolve that query, how it attempted to resolve it, or whether it did resolve it, because it's very important for us to understand, the process that CSA follows in resolving queries that you raised, with your son's experience with the Boland Cricket. Thank you.
Advocate, thanks for the question. What I can remember that my wife, the feedback that my wife got was when she spoke to Cricket South Africa said they will address it with Boland. And that was the end of it. Never heard again. And unfortunately, you'll see in my submission that the other issues I had personally, exactly the same thing. There's almost a reluctance to resolve issues amicably or correctly. And it comes back. It comes back to leadership. It comes back to what I said in the first place when I started. It hinges on the injustices, the fragmentations, and the mistrust. And we have to zoom into that if we want to go forward. I'm sorry that I hammer on it. But for me, leadership is key. The way they communicate is so vital. How are we going to build this trust in the situation that we confronted today, what has happened with cricket and is currently still happening with cricket in South Africa? How are we going to build trust?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank you for the opportunity. I want to apologize for the emotions that I showed.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of hurt. I promise you. I saw it in myself. I saw it in other players. There's a lot of healing to be done. Where people who's my age at unification thought that they were going to now get an opportunity, they didn't. They didn't come close to getting an opportunity. We don't know the depth of the emotional damage we've done to people. But I thank you for giving me the opportunity, and I wish you everything of the best on your journey to come up with some recommendations, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Henry, let me just assure you that it is this project that needs to thank people like you. It's not easy for anyone to relive an experience that is going to be hurtful, in the sense that it sort of, touches on wounds that need to heal. But the very engagement of the process actually causes the wounds to open up again before, the person heals. But I usually make an example of, of it always being necessary when there is a boil, sometimes lancing the boil and causing it to open up is the best way for that boil to heal. Because the poison inside the boil is going to remain there. But once you lance that boil and the pus comes out, that it's a very, 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 graphic image, but it's an image that all of us can relate to. All of us at some stage or another have had those kinds of, pus-infested, boils. And some use hot water, but those who decide, let me just lance this boil, and the pus comes out, all of us know the relief that we get. And I think for everybody who is going to participate in this process, that's why we have published how we want to get there, what we want to achieve. And I would imagine that only those who are diehards, who do not want to see the healing of the nation take place, and that healing starts with us in the examination of this sporting code. It's only those people who will think that this process is not worth the time that is given to it. It's not as though all those people who are around this table and people who, like you, come and testify do not have anything else to do. It is because we want to say the future which we leave behind for our children should ideally be a better future than what we went through. And if this process is going to assist, and that's why the project was named Social Justice and Nation Building. If that is what it is intending to achieve, let it be free to investigate my complaint, to investigate the explanation that it might be given by whomsoever feel. Not everything has been accurately conveyed to us. So it is people like you who say, I am going to go to that project. I am going to say my piece because I know that what I say is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing else but the truth. So thank you very much. We don't take
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Like I said, if what you're saying, and I agree with you in terms of leaving a better South Africa for our children, for everyone, children, I commit myself to that. Long time ago. Long time ago. So you've got my commitment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. We will adjourn. I propose that we adjourn to start with Mr. Silowa at 13:30 rather than at 1300. And if he could be advised accordingly, so that his session will go without prejudicing him up to 15:30. But the resumption time is 13:30. We adjourn.